A pleasant day to you, ma'am. I am Jovel P. Sagusay, and I'm from BCHM 3B, and this is my Chapter 7 entitled Laws Regulating Transportation Establishment. So, from the time the wheel was invented, man began to travel and explore different corners of the world. In modern time, with the invention of the first flying machine and marine vessel, tourism started to grow as a fast pace. Transportation as a business carries with it not only high return but great responsibility, for many lives are at stake in this risky sector of tourism. So, before we proceed to the report, here's are the list of the learning objectives. So, students are able to identify the law affecting the transportation sector, and students are able to identify the rights of passenger of commercial transportation, and students are able to explain the relevance of this law of the promotion of tourism and the country. And here's are the content summary. So this module introduced you to the following topics. So first is the law on common carrier. Second is responsibility of common carrier. Third is liability of common carrier for the act of employment, strategy, and next is the seatbelt law, law on transportation of animals. Next is law on importation of vehicle. Next is the public service law, and lastly the traffic law. So first is the law on common carrier. So the primary law that govern common carrier is the Civil Code of the Philippines, as clearly implied from the Article 1766 thereof, which state that in the matter not regulated by this code, the right to obligation of common carrier shall be governed by the Code of Commerce and special law. So, in Article 1732, common carriers are persons, corporations, firms of associations engaged in the business of carrying or transporting passenger of goods of both by land, water, or air for compensation, offering their services to the public. So, a common carrier is defined as one holding itself out of the public and engaged in the transportation of freight of passenger for hire. It is one who is in the business transporting goods of people or person for hire and public utility. A private carrier, it contrasts, it is not the business and transporting public employment, but hires out to deliver good in particular cases. Both the Civil Code and the Code of Commerce give the clear-cut division between the contract of carriage or of cargo of the contract and carriage of passenger, because the rights and defenses in each kind of contract are different from the other. So, next is the responsibility of common carrier. In Article 1733, common carrier, from the nature of their business and for reason of public policy, are bound and observe extraordinary diligence in the vigilance over the goods and for the safety and passenger transported by them according to all the circumstances of each case. In Article 1755, a common carrier is bound to carry the passenger safely as far as human care and foresight can provide, using the utmost diligence of very cautious persons with due regards for all the circumstances. And in the Article 1756, in case of death or injuries to passenger, common carriers are presumed to have been at fault of the act of negligently, useless, prove that they observe extraordinary diligence of prescribed in Article 1733 and 1755. In Article 1757, the responsibility of the common carrier for the safety of passenger as are required in Article 1733 and 1755 cannot be dispensed with the lessened by stipulation, by the posting of notice, by statement of ticket or otherwise. So, as soon as the passenger puts his foot on the platform, the obligation of the extraordinary diligence of the common carrier begins, and the relation of the carrier of passenger does not case at the moment of the passenger alight from the carrier's vehicle at the place selected by the carrier at the point of destination, but continues until the passenger has had the reasonable time of reasonable opportunities to leave the carrier premises. So next is the liabilities of common carriers for the act of employment and stranger. So in the Article 1759, common carrier are liable for the death of injury to passenger through the negligence of or willful act of the former employees, although such employees may have an act beyond the scope of their authority of the violation of order to common carrier. This liability of the common carrier does not case upon proof that they exercise the diligence of the good father of the family in the selection and supervision of their employers. So here's our discussion of law. So for a bus company, due diligence in selection of employees is not satisfied by finding that the applicant possessed a professional driver license. So the employer should also examine the applicant for his qualification, experience, and record of service. Due diligence in supervision, on the other hand, requires for formulation of rules and regulation for the guidance of employees and insurance of proper instruction, as well as the actual implementation and monitoring of consistent compliance with rules. For a shipping company, the vessel must be considered seaworthy, adequately equipped for the voyage, and manned with a sufficient number of competent officers and crew. Next is the regulation of the transportation business. So the Department of Transportation and Communication, or the DOTC, is the primary policy, planning, programming, regulating the administrative entity of the executive branch of the government, and the promotion, development, and regulation of dependable and coordinated network of transportation and communication system, as well as in the fast, safe, efficient, and reliable postal, transportation, and communication services. It has the power to authority and technical expertise to determine whether or not a specific transportation or communication project is necessary, viable, and beneficial to the people. So next is the regulation of air transportation business. So in Legislative Act number 3909, passed by the Philippines legislature on November 20, 1931, created an office under the Department of Commerce and Communications to handle aviation matter, particularly the enforcement of rule and regulation, government, commercial aviation, as well as private flying. It was amended by Act 3996 to include licensing of airmen and aircraft, inspection and aircraft concerning air traffic rules, schedules, and rate, and enforcement of aviation law. Next is the registration of aircraft. So, only aircraft owned by or leased to citizen of the Philippines and which are not registered under the law of any foreign country must be eligible for registration. So, here's a discussion of law. So, the certificate of registration is conclusive evidence of ownership, except in the proceeding where such ownership is in issued or when the aircraft is only under lease. Next is the regulation of the shipping industry. So the Maritime Industry Authority, or the Marina, was created on June 1, 1974, with the issuance of Presidential Decree number 474 to integrate the development, promotion, and regulation of the maritime industry in the country. It was originally placed under the Office of the President, with the creation of the Ministry of the Transportation and Communication by virtue of Executive Order Number 546, or the Marina was attached to the DOTC for Policy and Program Coordination on July 23, 1979. Next is the authority to operate. So, no franchise certificate or other form of authorization awarded by Marina for the carriage of cargo or passenger or boat in domestic trade shall be granted except in domestic ship owner or operators. So the term domestic ships owner and operator, it means a citizen of the Philippines or the commercial partnership wholly owned by the Filipinos, or a corporation at least 60% of the capital of which is owned by Filipino, which is duty to authorized by the Maritime Industry Authority or the Marina to engage in the business of domestic shipping. However, foreign vessels who may wish to engage in the trade and commerce with Philippine territorial water may be granted a special permit by the Marina with no domestic vessel are available or suitable to provide the needed shipping services where public interest warrant the same. Next is the regulation of the land and transportation. So, the concept of the land transportation system in the Philippines started when our ancestors invested me of locomotion. So, the early means of transportation used were animals in moving people and goods from place to place. Although the means of the land transportation during the early days were not as sophisticated of the modern vessels or modern vehicles of today, and the roads were not are well constructed, and early Filipino also observed some form of law to govern their mobility. So today, it is the Land Transportation Office or the LTO and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board or the LTFRB, which are the agency involved in regulation of the land transportation industry. So, the LTO is the proper agency which control the registration and operation of the motor vehicles and the licensing of owner, dealers, conductors, driver, and similar matters. Under the Clean Air Act of 1999, vehicles must pass the emission testing requirements to be administered by the Department of Transportation and Communication as a prerequisite for registration. Next is the seatbelt law. So, the seatbelt law was enacted to secure and safeguard its citizenry, particularly the passenger and driver of the private and public motor vehicle, from the ruinous and extreme injurious effect of the vehicle accident. In order to secure the safety of the passenger and driver of all times, the mandatory enforcement of the use of seatbelt devices by the drivers and front seat passenger of the private and public motor vehicle shall be enforced. So, the driver and front seat passenger of the public vehicle are required to wear and use their seatbelt devices while inside a vehicle of running engine of any road of thoroughfare. So, in addition, the driver of the public motor vehicle shall be required to immediately inform the required and front seat passenger upon boarding a vehicle of running engine to wear the prescribed seatbelt. Any passenger who refuses to wear seatbelt shall not be allowed to continue his or her trip. Next is the law on transportation of animals. So, by the virtue of the Republic Act 8485, also known as the Animal Welfare Act of 1998, it shall be the duty of any operator of any land, air, or water public utility transporting pets, wildlife, and other animals to provide its cases adequate, clean, and sanitary facility for the safe conveyance and delivery thereof of designate and place of confinement. These animals shall be provided sufficient food and water while in transit of more than 12 hours of whenever necessary. So, here's our discussion of law. In order to assure safety of the passenger and crew member of the aircraft or vessel, it is necessary to obtain a shipping permit from a Bureau of Quarantine before an animal may be allowed to be transported on board. So next is the law on importation of vehicles. So there are relevant law on the importation of vehicles which may be useful for the transportation businesses, namely the Republic Act number 727 that allows the free flow of goods and capital within the Subic Bay Port in Subic, province of Zambales, in order to attract investor to invest their capital in business climate with the least government intervention. So under the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, any imported new or locally assumed new motor vehicle shall not be registered on the LTO unless it complies with the emission standard set evidences by the Certificate of Conformity by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Under the Republic Act number 8750, or known as the Seatbelt Use Act of 1999, it shall be unlawful for any person to import of or cause the importation of any vehicle without appropriate and operational seatbelt devices. Next is the Public Service Law. So the Public Service Law includes every person who may own, operate, manage, or control the Philippines for hire and compensation with general or limited clientele, whether permanent, occasional, or accidental, and done for general business purposes, any common carriers, railroad or street railways, traction railways, subway motor vehicles, steamboat or steamship lines, ferries, watercraft, shipguard, and unless otherwise except, no public service shall operate without having been issued a certificate of public convenience of the certificate of public convenience and necessity or the necessity rather. In RA 11659, provide that the foreign nationals are allowed to own more than 50% of capital in public services engaged in the operation and the management of critical infrastructure, but only in the country of such foreign national accord reciprocity of the Philippines national under the foreign law of treaty. Next is the traffic law. Traffic law are the law which regulate vehicle and other traffic including pedestrian, animals, and other conveniences. Traffic law or regulation vary from a place to place. In many countries, the rules that road codified, setting out of the legal requirements and punishment for breaking them. In the U.S., traffic laws are regulated by the states and municipalities through their respective traffic codes. Most of these are based on at least in part of the Uniform Vehicle Code, but there are the variation for state to state. So in Republic Act number 4136 is refers to the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, also well known as one of the most important driving laws ever enacted. It was enacted in 1964 and somehow became the cornerstone that laid the foundation of all Philippine traffic law and regulation. So, in overall of this report is the law regulating transportation establishment is typically cover a wide range of area including safety standards, licensing requirements, environmental regulation, labor law, and fair regulation. So this law aims to ensure the safety and efficiency of the transportation services while also protecting the rights of workers and consumers. Specific regulation vary depending on the mode of transportation, just like for example the air, railroad, maritime, and jurisdiction, but they are generally served to govern operation, infrastructure, and interaction with the public. Compliance with this law is essential for the transportation establishment to operate legality and responsibility. And I think this is my all about my chapter 7, and have a nice day ahead again, and thank you.